G'day there, my name's Paul Lyons. I'm the author and director of a play called Lamarr, which is about to be produced by the Manawatu Theatre Society. It's going on in August of this year, 2026. So I guess I should talk a little bit about what I have to do with the play, aside from having written it. I used to be a Massey lecturer. I specialised in, amongst other things, data communications, which is actually relevant to the play, not just a piece of background information that you'll throw away. Because the play is about a woman called Hedy Lamarr, hence the title. She was renowned for being, the most beautiful woman in the world. That was the way she was billed. She was also a film star in the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. 40s and 50s, I suppose, were her golden period. And against this image that she projected of being the most beautiful woman in the world, who was a great film goddess, there was a sort of hidden life in that she was an inventor. She had a mechanically very astute mind, and she'd been involved in doing mechanical things since she was a small girl. And she led an extraordinary life. She had all sorts of ups and downs. She was famous for a film that she was in when she was about 17, when she was naked and having sex, which we don't show in the play, by the way. And she married an arms dealer who was the third richest man in Austria. So this was a little bit unusual. Most people don't do that. He kept her prisoner in his castle, in his Schloss is the Viennese word for it. So she was in a castle in Vienna, unable to go, in Austria, unable to go and visit her parents, for example, in Vienna. He also forbade her to act, because at that stage she was an actress. So she escaped from him, she escaped from Austria, she escaped from the Nazis, who were just about to come in and take over in Austria. She went to America. She managed to negotiate a very good deal with Louis B. Mayer, the movie producer, and she starred in many pictures. She was bored as hell because the acting that she was doing was not really up to the sort of interest level of the things that she'd done before and what she was capable of. She got cast as the exotic seductress who had 3 or 4 lines in any film, and it didn't really challenge her very much. So she had short periods during which she was filming, and then long periods during which she was waiting for the next film to come along. So she'd have most of each year with nothing much to do. She was on salary all this time, being paid quite handsomely, and in fact she ended up quite well off at that stage. But she had Jewish ancestry, and she'd just escaped from Austria with the Nazis taking over, and she felt survivor guilt. And this was exacerbated when a ship called the City of Benares, which was carrying refugees from Europe, was torpedoed by a German submarine, and many casualties ensued, and there were 90 Jewish children on board, of whom 77 were killed. So she felt that she had got away, and these children, who were completely innocent, had done nothing wrong, had been killed. So she felt she needed to do something for the Allied war effort. So, coming back to the fact that she was mechanically very astute, she teamed up with a guy called George Antheil, who was a pianist, and he had some compositions for piano. One in particular was for 16-player pianos. So player pianos are automatic pianos that run without human intervention. And the idea was that you had 16-player pianos on stage simultaneously, and they were synchronized, and they were playing this piece of music with 16 separate parts in it. And this meant that he also was mechanically quite competent. So they got together and they invented a thing called spread spectrum radio. At least that's what we called it. She called it frequency hopping radio. We call it spread spectrum radio these days, which is much more difficult to say, I might say. And the idea was that this could be used to guide torpedoes, so that the American or the Allies could fire these torpedoes from their ships and use them to sink submarines, because at that stage the German submarines were dominating the war. It seemed as though German submarines were possibly going to win the war for the Germans. And the idea behind the radio system was that it could be used without being jammed, so using a mechanism based on the player piano mechanical mechanism with the paper rolls that went past a reader and made the various notes on the piano play. You could, instead of controlling the notes on a piano, you could control the frequency of a radio transmitter. So the ship's radio transmitter would be swapping from one channel to another, to another, to another, to another, in time with the music, if you like to call it that, the role that was being played. And inside the torpedo there would be a radio receiver that was synchronized with the transmitter on the ship, and it would be swapping to the same channel, to the same channel, to the same channel as the transmitter in the ship. And the idea was that this would be something that basically would be undetectable by the people in the submarine. They wouldn't know that this was going on because the radio was swapping from one frequency to another quite rapidly, and it would basically just sound like radio interference. So they wouldn't know that it was happening, and if they did work out that it was happening, it would be very difficult to jam. So this was meant to allow the Allies to fire torpedoes at the Nazis. So she got this patented. It was a secret patent, of course, and she went to the US Navy and said, here's this idea, you can have it for guiding your torpedoes. And the US Navy said, well, thank you very much, little woman. We're not really interested in this idea. Why don't you go off and support the Allied war effort by giving concerts and raising money? And to her credit, she didn't go off in a snit. She actually went and raised money at concerts, and she raised $26 million for the Allied war effort, which in the 1940s was a great deal of money. So she did some useful things, but the US Navy said also, oh, by the way, this is our property now. You're a foreigner. We're allowed to sequester the property of any foreigner in our country during the war, and they took the patent and didn't use it, at least not for 20 or 30 years, and they didn't pay her anything for it. When they did start using it, they didn't give her any royalties. So she had invented this astonishing piece of technology which never resulted in any income for her. And later in life, she did a television interview in which she was asked a series of vacuous questions about her diamonds and her way of life and whether she cleaned her own floors and all these stupid questions which are really very superficial. And at the end of this vacuous interview, the radio host, or the television host, I keep saying radio, the television host said, and is there anything else that you've done that's worthy of interest? Well, spread spectrum radio at that stage was still a military secret, so she said no. And that was it. She didn't get paid anything for it. Oh, and it's the technology that underlies cell phones, underlies Wi-Fi, underlies GPS, underlies the Internet of Things. There are a dozen technologies these days which use spread spectrum radio. And it's worth billions. And I don't mean it's just worth billions in total, I mean it's worth billions every year. She could have been one of the richest people in the world as a result of her invention. She was quite rich for a while, and as I've got her to say in the play, she developed expensive tastes when she was being well paid. The expensive tastes lasted, but the high income didn't. So she ended up on an Actors Guild pension in her old age. So it's very sad. And I mean that's essentially the story of the play. And I've been asked what inspired me to write this play, and there are, I guess, a number of inspirations. One is that I was involved in data communications, as I said at the outset of this little talk. That was one of my research areas when I was a lecturer at Massey, and just as she got a patent for a data communications technology, for a secret radio communication technology, so a colleague of mine and I got a patent for a data communications technology, which is sort of the opposite of what she did. She allowed for one piece of information to be chopped around from one radio channel to another. We set up a system in which you could have a lot of different channels, and the information you wanted to send could be sent over those various different channels. It's sort of the other way around, but it was interesting to me. And another part of the inspiration was that somebody came to the university and gave a lecture to some of our students, and he was talking about data communications, and he said to the students that there was this person called Lamarr who had invented spread spectrum radio. But you people wouldn't know anything about that, he said, in a very disparaging way. And I thought, well, yes, in fact, I tell the students about Lamarr, not in great detail, but a little bit. So I piped up and I gave a very brief summary of what she'd done. I think he was, I think his nose was out of joint as a result of that. But afterwards I thought to myself, well, I know quite a lot about this person. Why don't I write a play about it? So I did. You can find information about the auditions, such as the description of the characters and some audition pieces at tinyurl.com/Lamarr-auditions. I don't think it's case sensitive. So hope to see you next Saturday, and good luck.